Hey there, my name is Orion, and today I am joined by Trina from My Lady ADHD.
Hello.
And Coach Noel.
Hey.
So today we have a note from a listener.
Hi, this is Sam from California. I wanted to ask about ADHD and relationships. I feel like it's been really difficult lately for me to explain some of my ADHD things with my partner, and I feel like we've been struggling a little bit around this. How can I talk about my ADHD with my partner? Is this an ADHD thing, or am I just really bad at relationships?
Oh, I know that feeling all too well, feeling like you're
Yes.
just bad at life.
I think it might be an ADHD thing.
I think so.
Also a human thing.
I definitely have a whole list of things that I also struggle with in relationships that I jotted down just to give this person something to resonate with, because I think this is a super common issue with ADHDers.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were talking briefly right before we started recording. Noelle, this is something that members come in with all the time.
Yeah, like one of our top reasons that people come to us for coaching.
Is the relationship issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so sad and so hard.
I think that just goes to show, though, like just how common this is. So I think that that's going to be a really important takeaway from this episode is if you're feeling like you're bad at relationships or just communicating in general, this is a really common thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I know myself, I definitely have struggled with this. I know before I was even diagnosed, it was worse, right? Because you couldn't label it. You didn't know what was going on. You just felt really up.
Yeah.
And there might even be a little bit of some trauma attached to that too that we can probably go into.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know that it's ADHD that is holding you back in your relationships, you're gonna blame yourself, and so there's all kinds of shame, and that's where the whole "is this just me" kind of question comes in.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like, what the issues are, like, what does come up with ADHDers and relationships? What are the most common things that you hear, like, members struggling with in particular?
Yeah, well, I mean, because a relationship is kind of part of your whole life, every ADHD symptom can impact a relationship. You've got boredom, whether that's, oh, I'm bored of this conversation and I'm having a hard time paying attention to it, or maybe you kind of lose that initial spark in the beginning. And so initially you're like, enamored with the person because it's new, right? And we love novelty. And then that newness fades and you spend less and less time together. And it's not because you don't care about them anymore. It's just that the newness isn't there to keep your brain focused on it. Then impulsivity, which can cause all kinds of issues with like misunderstanding and communication and distraction in general. Then there's all the like various co-occurring mental health things that many people with ADHD tend to have, like anxiety or depression. So that can come in. Issues with organization or task initiation make household chores and management and balancing responsibilities between two people a lot harder. Emotional regulation also can cause whether it's rejection sensitivity or flying off the handle kind of stuff. And then memory issues where it's not that you don't care, you're just really bad at holding dates and names and stuff in your head. Yeah, there's a lot.
That is a lot.
That comes into it.
The first thing I think about is how often in my relationships, I maybe don't realize, yeah, I live with ADHD every day and it's so frustrating to have all of those issues. But like someone else that you're married to or you live with is also dealing with those things in a different way. And I sometimes forget. Sometimes I'm like, well, why are frustrated? But they don't know how much more frustrating it is for me on my end, I guess. But it's hard for me to remember that they need some education and communication skills and stuff to work with their ADHD partner.
I have this theory, and I would love to hear your feedback on this. I think most relationship problems come down to a communication breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
Either you're not able to communicate your emotions or like your intention, or there's something that's just going unsaid that causes some like confusion or miscommunication down the line. It's a situation where I can imagine you have two people in a relationship together. One has ADHD, one doesn't. They don't understand each other's viewpoints. And if they're not able to communicate their needs to each other appropriately, then you just have two people resenting each other now and thinking the other person might even be doing it intentionally or is just completely ignoring the way that you're feeling and the needs that you have. And so like for somebody with ADHD, maybe we don't even have the language to describe the stuff that we're dealing with yet, especially if you're not diagnosed yet or you're recently diagnosed. But then for somebody who's neurotypical, you don't understand this invisible problem that your partner is dealing with. On the outside, it looks like something else. And that something else can oftentimes be pretty troubling, right? If it looks like they're not paying attention to you, or it looks like they're being lazy, or they're not upholding their end of the bargain, that can be frustrating as well.
Yeah, like I'm sure, I know that I've run into this in my marriage, is if my husband asks me to do something and it's like really important to him and I really want to do that thing, but it just disappears. Like it just does not stay in my brain, and I come across as the person that like doesn't care about them. I think that's a really common one, is like the memory stuff, like you were saying earlier, Noelle. So like you have to have something back up to support you, knowing that that's probably going to happen. You have to like put some support systems in place. There are so many struggles that you forget that you deal with, that your partner is also dealing with. I find that kind of interesting. I'm like, I always want them to have empathy for me, but am I really giving them that same empathy back?
Right.
Not
well,
always.
Think about how different the exact same circumstances look just by getting more information about what's going on. Like I remember there's a particular book I read. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. Probably one of my ebooks, but it had a really great kind of example of this, where let's say you said you were going on a date with someone and they're going to pick you up at 8. 8 comes around and they're not there and they haven't called. Your initial instinct, because you don't know any better, might be to be super offended. Hey, they're standing me up. And okay, I'm just going to give them 5 more minutes. Let's not overreact. 5 minutes passes. 10 minutes passes. And the longer it goes, the more frustrated you're getting, because how could they not even call me, right? Then an hour goes by and they show up and they're like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Something bad happened. I was in an accident or whatever, and I wasn't able to call you. I'm so sorry, And then now you feel like the butthead. So you've been thinking this whole time that they were, intentionally standing you up. But now that you have new information, the situation looks completely different. And that's a lot of times how it can be with ADHD. You look at the same circumstance where the partner with ADHD is not doing, the chores they agreed to regularly. Well, for the partner with ADHD, they're feeling super bad about the fact that they keep forgetting this and they want to do it. It's just their brain won't let them remember, and they haven't figured out the right strategy to remember yet. If the partner without ADHD doesn't know that that's what's going on, it looks a lot like laziness or not caring about them or not listening. So I think communication is like so important, because once both people are on the same page about what's going on, you can work together as a team to come up with solutions that work for both of you.
It's almost like when you're not able to communicate to each other, that gap is going to be filled with assumptions. And usually those assumptions are based on your own personal things going on, or some insecurity or whatever, which that's even worse, right? If you're using your own insecurities to fill the gap that communication is leaving, that's incredibly terrifying place to be.
I think it's super tough, because I've heard two people say, oh, you're using ADHD as an excuse in this scenario. And I know a lot of people have reframed it to, well, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation of what's going on. But I know that this is really common in ADHD relationships to hear that ADHD is an excuse to, maybe forget your chores or forget XYZ. And you're like, you're using it as an excuse, which is very frustrating for the person with ADHD to hear that. So I don't know, I just wanted curious if you guys have had any experience with that, or what you think about that explanation versus excuse scenario.
I think we kind of talked about that in a different way in an episode about work and how to talk to an employer about it. Because in that episode, we were talking about how, I think if you're asking for accommodations, you might say, hey, I struggle with remembering deadlines. And if you just come and say, hey, I can't remember deadlines, and leave it up to them to be the only one to try and come up with a solution, that's more in like excuse territory. If you say, hey, you know what? I really struggle with remembering deadlines. This is, kind of some of the ideas I've had about how we might come up with, a solution for this. Can we talk together about what might be a good solution so that we're both on the same page? Now that is more taking accountability and being proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like the reframing of that.
Yeah. This idea of I'm not just like throwing my hands up and saying, well, I have ADHD. It's, hey, I have ADHD. We're on the same page now. This is what I need to accommodate this. And like together, I think that's also part of that communication, right? It's not just communicating that you have ADHD and then, okay, that's it. It's, I have ADHD. Here are my needs. Let's work together to figure this out. I heard this really good explanation the other day of ADHD paralysis. And I feel like it's a really good way to like those moments where you're locked in the couch and you're like, I need to go do 500 different chores and everybody's depending on me to do these things and I need to go do them, but you can't do it. Somebody, I forget who it was. I think it was on TikTok probably. They were giving this explanation of here's a gas stove and there's this raging blue fire there. And they're like, just put your hand down on it. Just throw your hand on it. And she's like, no matter what you do, your body is not going to allow you to put your hand down because you know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, sure, you can force it, you can overcome it, and you can like force your body to do it. But every cell in your body is going to be fighting against you to not allow you to do that. That's kind of what ADHD paralysis feels like a lot of times. And so overcoming that is not just a willpower or I'm just going to get up and do it moment. It's no, my entire body is fighting me right now and I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was also thinking about how someone also recently said for people with ADHD, like if you have to brush your teeth or let's say you have to do the dishes or the chore, like you have to think about every single step. It's not as like natural as somewhat like a neurotypical person. So there is more effort involved in a basic task. Like it is more strenuous. It is more exhausting. It is overwhelming because sitting on the couch knowing you have to do 100 things, it's almost like you have to do 400 things because you have to do, you have to really think about all the steps in between. And so it is overwhelming to think about that. And it does leave you glued on the couch because it just feels huge, at a certain time.
I think a lot of things are a lot bigger for us just because we can't kind of automatically do the executive functions, right? We have to be consciously aware of them. Just like we talked about, I think, in the episode about, what was it? It was about writing tasks.
Task paralysis or something, or the to-do list.
Yeah, maybe the to-do list one. Whereas okay, just to figure out, how to do a task or how to plan something, you're not just saying, oh, do this task. You're saying, okay, now I have to figure out every single step. And whereas a neurotypical person, a lot of that just happens automatically in the background and they're not even aware of it. For us, we have to like intentionally go through it. And so it does make a lot of things much bigger and harder.
It's that autopilot thing. Sometimes it feels like you don't actually have the autopilot and then you have to go through and do everything very manually.
So like thinking about this person that called in, and I guess their question is, what can we do to help our partner understand and just to not fight as much and to maybe communicate better?
I think that's a really important call out. And you've made it twice now, is this idea of what can we do? Like remembering that this is a relationship. And yes, you might be the one with ADHD. Maybe you're the neurotypical listening to this and your partner has ADHD. But like remembering that this is a partnership and that communication only works when both of you are participating. And that means like making a safe space. That means actively listening when your partner is explaining. There's also another thing that's really useful, which is called mirroring. And mirroring is just basically like when your partner says something, you should say it back to them just to demonstrate that you understand it and allow room for them to correct you if you don't.
Yeah, I think that one can be almost extra helpful for people with ADHD if you know, okay, I'm going to practice mirroring because then you have like that intent, that conscious intent of I need to be paying attention to this so that I can say it back, And
that can be kind of weird, right? If I'm imagining situations in the past where I'm talking to a neurotypical and they say something and I mirror them and they're like, yes, I just said that, right? It almost sounds like, what are you doing? And so maybe in these situations, rather than just doing these things, like actively communicating to your partner and being like, hey, I'm going to repeat this back just because I want to make sure I understand it. I want to give you the opportunity to adjust it so that we're on the same page. Because like that shared understanding is the whole goal of communication, right? It's not just, I'm going to say these things, you're going to hear them, and we both acknowledge that things have been said. It's no, we have to come to a shared understanding. And that shared understanding is what allows us to move forward together. Because otherwise, if we have different understandings of what's going on, we're moving in different directions.
That's such a basic level to start at, but it is like the main key ingredient to moving forward is like getting to a place where you can both communicate in a calm manner and that you're both listening and you both understand. And you're just trying to find the common ground can be really difficult. But you kind of have to start there. It kind of sucks.
Yeah. I mean, whether you have ADHD or not, I think one of the things that I always try to tell people is that you're having an argument, you have a disagreement, there's a problem. It's really helpful for the both of you to kind of step back and say, this isn't me against my partner. This is us against that thing. And so when you're coming at it together as a team, that can take some of the hurt and the emotion out of it, because it's not about you and it's not about them. It's about this other thing that you're both approaching. I mean, when it comes to the mirroring and labeling and all that stuff, there's actually a few different kind of, twists that I come up with for some of my clients that can make it a little easier to engage in communication and be present and all of that.
You've been listening to Brainwaves.
Hey, we have so much to say on this topic. If you are interested in hearing more about this, we have a whole guide about how to facilitate conversations with your partner. If you're interested in getting that download, there will be a link down below this episode on the website at shimmer.care/brainwaves.